Hey guys, I'm Naya and welcome back to the channel. So again, before we start, I'm going to encourage you to let me know if you like my current setup, because this is going to be the setup moving forward. And yeah, please let me know. Today we're going to be talking about the Kashtira archetype. I wanted to do an introduction, and we're also going to focus on everything post-Photon Hypernova. So we're going to cover the entire archetype, because in the OCG, it really started to gain popularity in the last couple of tournaments. It was like, the tier limit is still the best deck, but tier limit started to be mashed up together with Kashtira because of some support that we are going to be discussing as well. And also the pure Kashtira deck is following behind in second place. So I wanted to cover it today. And I also want to shout out my Patreons before we get started. In case any of you want to support me over there, you can always check the link in the description below. And I'm so thankful for you guys' support over there on Patreon. So some of the Kashtira cards were actually introduced in Darkwing Blast, but the most support and the best cards are coming out in Photon Hypernova in February. So basically, the archetype is comprised of level 7 monsters, which are, all of them share the effect of being able to be special summoned while you control no monsters. It's not an activated effect, you just summon them. And while they're on the field, all of them search cards from the archetype. And then also, they banish the opponent's cards from different locations. And that's pretty much the effects they all share, but it is different locations, different types of cards they search. And we're going to go just one by one and discuss all of the cards. We're also going to cover some of the OCG builds, because like I said, they are being mashed together with tier elements, because spoiler, one of the support cards is called Tier Limits Kashtira. So it's effectively tying both archetypes together. That's why it's seeing play over there. And then also as the pure deck, we're also going to look at a combo. And yeah, pretty much like this deck seeing that much play in the OCG, I think is saying something. And just looking at the combos and looking at the ability of cards and the entire support and all, I do think it's going to have a lot of impact here in the TCG as well. Like one of the Xyz monsters, just to quickly mention it, is actually locking monster zones and spell and trap card zones when cards are banished. So effectively, they are just almost like an anti-meta strategy, because you're able to play cards like D-Shifter in there and stuff like that. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So we're going to cover all of the cards that you can play with the archetype as well. So there's a lot to discuss. So let's go ahead and get started with the card by card breakdown. So like I said, all of them share similar effects, so we won't cover those ones, but we're just going to cover the differences between them. So when it comes to Kashtira Fenrir, during the main phase, it searches a Kashtira monster. It can search itself. Some people play 3 copies of Kashtira Fenrir, or a lot of people, I should say. As you probably know, builds are like running Kashtira Fenrir. Basically, their effects trigger if you declare an attack with that card, or if your opponent activates a monster effect. It's very different conditions, but they do trigger based on that. So Kashtira Fenrir actually banishes a card on the field face down. It does need to be a face-up card, and it does target, but it's still an insane effect, and that's why it's seeing play. So the next one, Kashtira Unicorn, during the main phase searches their Kashtira spell card, and its second effect actually looks at your opponent's extra deck and banishes a card from it face down. So it's a lot of banishing face down, as you're going to see. Unicorn, Fenrir, all of the banished face down, which is busted. Like nothing gets actually triggered when it's banished face down. So that's really nice. And Unicorn is actually the 1-card combo we're going to be discussing later, but looking at it, and I want you to see like what the basic play is when you open Kashtira Unicorn. And then the third one, introduced in Darkwing Blast, Kashtira Ogre, searches for their in-archetype trap card. So you see Fenrir searches the monster, Ogre is trap, Unicorn is spell. And Ogre's second effect makes it so you excavate the top 5 cards of your opponent's deck, and you banish one of it face down, and you stack the rest on the top of the deck in any order that you please. So it gives you knowledge about what your opponent is playing. You can also decide what they are going to be drawing, and you also banish a card. So it's nice, although it's not exactly seeing play as like a tech card right now. So the spell card introduced in Darkwing Blast, Kashtira Birth, makes it so you can normal summon level 7 monsters without tributing. So this really opens a lot of possibilities for cards you can play in that deck, because you don't really need to utilize your normal summon, as you're going to be able to see. Like one of the cards actually from Photon Hypernova special summons itself when you control, like while you control a Kashtira monster. So So you're just not committing to your normal summon, so you're actually able to use it for like insane level 7 monsters if you want. And then its second effect is that during your main phase, you can revive a Kashtira monster from graveyard, or you can actually special summon it back from the banished pile as well. And then if your opponent activates a spell card or effect while you control a Kashtira monster, you can actually target 3 cards in their graveyard and banish them face down. It seems nice. It's also searchable via Unicorn, so you always have access to it if you want, and just seems like a really cool addition to the deck. It is seeing play in the deck as well. But then we have the Trap card, which isn't really seeing play. The other one is from Photon Hypernova, but this one, like, it's not bad, but it's not that great. So Kashtira preparations can, during either player's turn, special summon a Kashtira monster from your banished pile or from your hand. So the spell card special summons from grave or banished, and the trap card from banished or hand. And the second effect, its wording is actually really interesting. So if your opponent activates a trap card or effect, you're actually able to look at their hand and banish a card from it face down. But this card had to have been face up already for you to be able to activate it. So you essentially, and you also need to control a Kashtira monster. So you basically need to flip it and like reveal, like give knowledge to your opponent what your set card is, to then later like be able to activate it. And it's only if your opponent activates a trap card or effect. So this makes it even slower, and in my opinion, not that great. Like I said, it's not bad, but it's not insane. And the last one from Darkwing Blast is the extra deck monster that I mentioned is locking monster zones. So the Kashtira Shangri-Ira, I think that's how it's pronounced at least, can be made with 2+ level 7 monsters. And during each standby phase, you're able to special summon a Kashtira monster from your deck. And then each time a card your opponent possesses and owns, it says on the card that way, is banished face down, you are able to lock one of the zones. And since it's not once per turn, you're actually able to do it multiple times. And in some combos, you're able to lock like 2 to 3 zones on the first turn, and then 1 or 2 more on the opponent's turn. So you're able to lock every single one of the main monster zones if you want. It's also insane in the Pendulum matchup when you can lock the scales, which like, it's really, really nice. And because it's like 0 attack, 3000 defense, you just put it on the field in defense, because it also has a protection effect. So not only is it going to be hard to beat over it, but if this card would be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can just detach a material from it instead. So you're not detaching for any of the effects, you just have those materials. So you are able to like have this card on the field for as long as possible, because the zones are only locked when this card is face up on the field. That's pretty much everything from Darkwing Blast, but we are going to be looking, like I said, at Photon Hypernova as well, and it's introducing a ton of cards, and they're also really, really nice on top of it. So the first one is actually level 4, which is different from, you know, the level 7s like it's usual for the Kashtira archetype, but it does become level 7. So this one is most definitely seeing play in the deck, and it just basically says it's the one that I mentioned. When you control a Kashtira monster, you can actually special summon this card, so you don't need to waste your normal summon. And then during your main phase, if this card was normal or special summon this turn, you're able to activate the effect where you banish a Kashtira card from your deck to be able to banish the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck face down, and then this card becomes level 7. So this is basically what triggers the Shangri-Ira we mentioned before. Now the next two, I already mentioned the Kashtira, the Tearlament's Kashtira, but there's also Scareclaw Kashtira. So since this archetype is tying into the entire lore, it's like, yeah, tying into Scareclaw, Tearlaments, and all of that. That's why those cards from the other archetypes are tied together with the Kashtira archetype. Like, not to get too much into the lore, but Kashtira is supposed to be like this species that's like invading other planets, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Not gonna get into it too much more, although I love lore. But let's just stay on track. So the Scareclaw Kashtira and the Tearlament's Kashtira, both of them are extenders for the deck. And because from Darkwing Blast, the deck didn't really have extenders. Right now, when people are trying to play the deck, they are forced to use some other extenders we're going to be covering. But post Photon Hypernova, as you're going to be seeing in the OCG deck list, like, they're not really running anything else besides just Kashtira cards, because those cards, the Scareclaw Kashtira and the Tearlament's Kashtira, provide extenders. Both of them can be special summoned in the same way. As a quick effect, you're able to special summon them from the hand, and then you either banish a Kashtira card or a card from their respective archetypes from the graveyard or from the hand. And then they both have second effects. For the Scareclaw Kashtira, it's able to attack in defense position, and then you just take the defense for calculation, and that's tying into the Scareclaw archetype where everything is turned to defense because of the link and all of that. And then its last effect just says that any monster that battles a Kashtira or Scareclaw monster, its effects are actually negated until the end of the turn. And since it just says that if it battles, it can be either like you're attacking or they're attacking, so it's nice. It's just a negation effect. And then as for Tearlament's Kashtira, if it's normal or special summon, you can send the top 3 cards of either your deck or your opponent's deck to the graveyard. So you can either use it as like Merly for your deck, or you can just mill the top 3 cards of your opponent if you know you're not going to be hitting anything, and just take resources away or check what they're playing or whatever you may want to do. And then also its second effect, when it's sent to the graveyard by card effect, you mill 2 additional cards from the top of your deck. So it's just milling, it's seeing play in the Tearlament's deck in the OCG, so that's the support like mashup that I mentioned before. Then we also have a quick play spell card called Kashtira Overlap. It's not bad, but it's very, very specific. So the spell and trap cards actually have effects if they become banished. So that's tying together with the Rise card that we mentioned before, since it's banishing a Kashtira card from the deck. And the Overlap actually says that if this card becomes banished while you control a Kashtira monster, you're able to negate an opponent's monster's effect. And its first effect is that you target one monster on the field and you banish a monster with 1500 attack and 2100 defense from either player's field space up or from your hand or from your graveyard, and then the targeted monster gains 1500 attack. So it's decent. Not that great, but we're going to be moving to the other spell card, which is like the best spell card. You always want to search it with Unicorn, or at least for the most part, because it's also an extender. You're able to target a Kashtira monster you control, and then you special summon from your deck in defense position a Kashtira monster with a different attribute. And then you are also Xyz locked, like special summoning from the extra deck specifically, not overall. And also I forgot to mention that the Rise card Xyz locks you as well, but you don't really care. You play Xyz cards for the most part and a couple links, so you are able to just do your link plays and then, you know, get locked into XYZ or not go into links at all if you don't want to. And then the card's effect when it becomes banished is that you're able to take a banished Kashtira card and just add it to your hand. So it's basically replenishing your resources, which is always nice. And then the trap card that's actually seeing play in the deck, its first effect is decent, but you really want to use it for its second effect and just banish it off of Rise card, as I'm going to showcase in the combo. So we're going to cover that effect first. So if this card becomes banished, you target a Kashtira Xyz monster you control and you add one of the attached Xyz materials that's a Kashtira monster to your hand, and then you can special summon it from your hand. So like I said, the Shangri-La doesn't really care about having the Shangri-Ira, whatever, like doesn't really care about having the Xyz materials attached because it's only for protection. So in the combo, you're going to be able to activate the trap card and just take a material like a Fenrir, add it to your hand, special summon it, so you have an additional disruption. And then its first effect, if a Kashtira Xyz monster is on the field, so it can be on the opponent's field as well, you make both players banish monsters face down so they only control one. Like again, it's decent, it's some sort of disruption, but you would be taking your resources away as well. So like I said, for its second effect, it's really, really nice. For the first one, not so much. And then they also have a field spell, which is played in the Tearlament's deck as well, especially in the OCG because the planet, the Perlerino, is at 1. So they're also playing set rotation together with this field spell we're going to be discussing, but I'm getting into the details. But you know, you are able to get more consistently to Perlerino with playing the other field spell and set rotation as well. So you're going to see a lot of similarities between Perlerino and this field spell. On activation, it searches a Kashtira monster, just like Perlerino, and it's cool in the Tearlament's deck because you're able to go for Fenrir, which is able to search you the Tearlament's Kashtira. So that's the connection that you have there. You are consistently getting to that Tearlament card. You're also able to search the Tearlament's Kashtira with Perlerino. And then its second effect, your monsters gain 100 attack and defense for every single attribute that's different among the monsters on the field. So again, an attack boost, just like Perlerino, and then a destruction, just like Perlerino. If a Shangri-Ira activates the effect, you're able to destroy a card on the field. It's a bit more specific than with Perlerino because shuffling like your tier monsters back is much more useful and happens more than the Shangri-La activating the effect if you're playing the 3-element version. However, for the pure version, it's also really nice to have an additional pop. And then one of their best monsters introduced in Photon Hypernova is another Xyz monster, and you can make it with 3 level 7 monsters. There are ways of making it, like hard making it, as we would call it, and some people in the 3 elements deck actually play a small package to be able to make it, to be able to establish it, because not making it the hard way is a bit more complicated if you're not playing the pure deck. So it can be Xyz summoned if the Shangri-La activated its effect this turn, and you just slap it on top of a Kashtira monster. It can only be 1. So it's so free, you know, you just summon it so easily. But just something to think about is that the Shangri-La can activate the effect on the opponent's field as well, because it's not specifying that it needs to be activated on your field. So if you're going up against the card, you can just freely summon the Arise card still on top of one of your Kashtira monsters. And it also has multiple other effects as well. So each time a card is banished, you are able to attach one of the banished cards as material to this card. So it's really nice if you're trying to take away some of the most important resources your opponent may have. There's also ways of like getting to their extra deck monsters so they have no ways of recycling them, because like when it comes to banished cards, you can, per a ruling, distinguish between cards, like which of them were banished by which effect. For example, something like Pot of Desires or Unicorn in Archetype that banishes an extra deck monster face down. So you're able to just say, I want to take that card specifically, because you and your opponent need to distinguish between those cards. But again, that's getting into specifics. I still wanted to mention it because, you know, I like rulings. So with Arise card, one of the effects is specifically really nice because it's a Macrocosmos. That's just it. So you can freely summon it, and it's a Macrocosmos in a tier, like, infested meta. That's really, really nice. And then its last effect just says that you're able to detach 3 materials from this card and banish a card on the field. You do target it, but it is banished face down, and it's also a quick effect. So whenever you want to do it, and that's why it's nice when you're taking like materials from the banish pile, so you're able to actually detach 3. Everything about this card is really, really nice. And the effect of attaching materials is actually once per chain. Not once per turn, once per chain. So like I said, one of the best cards for sure. And yeah, we're going to be covering the cards that are played with the archetype as well, because like I said, you know, right now people play many different things, and we're also going to go over the extra deck monsters you can play together with the deck. So because the deck is severely lacking extenders right now, people are trying to play as many ways to go into level 7 monsters as possible. And what I mean by that, if you look at Psy Beast, it can make itself level 7. You also have Astral Kuribo, which can reveal a number monster and make its level the revealed monster's rank. So you reveal something like the Diablosis or something, you make it level 7. But there is a downside, like you need to immediately use it because you're locked into summoning only number monsters while it's on the field. So the first thing you summon, you need to use the Astral Kuribo together with it. Again, a way to get to a level 7 monster. There's the Ascended of Thunder as well, a level 7 monster that's freely special summon itself by paying 3,000 life points. So because you have so many level 7 monsters, you're able to play the Sacred Swords of 7 Stars, which is basically Orchestrated Return in a way, because you banish a level 7 monster from your hand or face-up field to draw 2 cards. And then you also have the package of Elemental Hero Spirit of Naos together with Instant Contact, because Naos searches the Instant Contact, and with Instant Contact, you can special summon a level 7 or lower Elemental Hero monster or a Neospatial monster as well. So that's all of the ways to go into level 7s. And also you have the Adventure Engine, because we still have everything, although it's not really seeing play. You know, but still, in this deck, you can play it because the monsters are level 7 and they are free special summons as well. So going over the extra deck monsters that can be played together with this archetype, the first one that comes to mind, like I mentioned it already, Diablosis the Mind Hacker is just insane in this deck. It's pretty much made for this deck. It banishes an opponent's monster face down from the extra deck. It can also banish face down cards from the graveyard. At the end of the battle phase, if this card destroyed a monster by battle, you can banish 1. And also, each time your opponent's cards that they own and possess become banished. You also banish them face down from the top of your opponent's deck, equal to the number of their already face down banished cards. So you have insane synergy with the deck. Rice Heart is banishing cards from their deck face down, and then if you go into Mind Hacker later, and if you have the Shangri-Ira as well, you just go, Mind Hacker effect, banish it in a new chain because it was banished. You banish 3 because of Rice Heart, banishing 3 before, and then you get the Shangri-Ira effect twice. First for Diablosis banishing from the extra deck. Secondly, because Diablosis banishes from the top of the deck as well. So you lock 2 monster zones just like that. You also locked one before when the Rice Heart banished cards face down. So you're just easily locking 3 monster zones. Like, there's really not much I need to say about this. Like, the card is just made for the deck. And going over the other cards, like, you have many cards that actually take your opponent's monsters. So looking at Big Eye, just a really neat rank 7 monster, just taking control of the opponent's monsters. Like, it's going to be insane in a mirror match. It's also going to be insane against Cheerlements if they're going to be playing the Kashtira package, because like I said, you can just make the Arise Heart on top of a Kashtira monster. So it's like, it reminds me of when people play Dingirsu to just slap it on top of things if you would like mind control a Galatea or something a couple years back. Then you can also play the Red Eyes Flare Metal Dragon just to burn your opponent, because we do need burn cards. There's also Draco Sack, which, like, this one, again, one of those cards that just feels like it's made for this, because you're so easily, it's so easily accessible, and you're so easily making zoos because of it. So you just go effect, summon the 2 tokens. You're able to use them if you want to pop a card on the field, and also while you control a token, this card cannot be destroyed, so you make zoos easily. And also there's like combos which I read about on Road to the King, where you go, like, you use tokens in the Tier Limit Kashtira deck to be able to link with them to go into Elf, to go into Sprint, and just easily access all of those cards, because the tokens are just free. They're just free bodies on the field, which are also granting you the ability of making zoos. So Draco Sack, to me, like, also one of the best cards in the extra deck. Then the Darkest Dragon Doom Rider is a way of getting rid of face-up cards. You just pop it, and then you can also, if you destroy the monster, make one of your monsters gain attack equal to its level or rank times 300, but this card cannot attack. So you just boost something else, I guess. Like, you can do whatever you want, but it's just like, I'm making a lot of comparisons to other decks, but it's reminding me of Virtual World, where you would like choose the best like level 16 crows or rank 6 Xyz monsters that just have so much utility, and you're just easily going into them. So this card just feels like one of those cards, and well, all of them do. But let's just go ahead and continue with the rest of them. And then the Titanic Moth, which is able to attack directly if you control no other monsters, but the damage is halved, and then after it inflicts damage, you can detach a material and actually burn them additionally for their cards in the hand. So again, just like the Red Eyes Flare Metal Dragon, it's a burn card. It's also, because it's able to attack directly, a very easy way of making Zeus. So for sure, a card that's seeing a lot of play in OCG deck lists. And for the effect of Master of Blades, when a card or effect is activated as a quick effect, you detach a material and you negate the activation if you do destroy that card, and you also destroy a card on the field. Now the next one, the Harmonizer Gradiela. I have no idea how to pronounce those cards. I'm just going to do it by how I would do it in my own language. So the Harmonizer card, I personally like a lot because it has multiple effects. But the effect I like the most is, as a quick effect, you're able to attach one of the opponent's monsters in the graveyard as material to this card, which is really nice against tier limits. And it's also very hard to out because its attached materials give it the same attributes. So it's at the same time considered as multiple attributes and cannot be destroyed by battle, and also cannot be destroyed by card effects of activated monsters effects with the same attributes. So monsters with the same attribute cannot destroy by battle or card effect if it's activated effects. It's insanely hard to out, like against specific decks, and I just think it's really, really nice. So the Donner Dagger for Hire is just used to pop 2 cards because it's able to pop itself and an opponent's card, and because it's taking itself from the field, you can special summon Kashtira monsters just easily because you control no more monsters. So you just go into it immediately, and you also, since you have effects of like taking control, you can like take something, make it, you just pop 2 cards and then continue playing and special summoning your Kashtira monsters. So like, I think it's really nice. Again, just a lot of utility in your extra deck. Then I also wanted to mention the package of Raid Raptor Arsenal Falcon that you can use to special summon various Achi of the Stormwinds from your deck. So a Flunder tech basically in this deck that can be played if you want. Like I haven't really seen it in a lot of lists. Like some of those cards, like I wanted to mention as many monsters that I was able to find of people just mentioning them, playing them. I was seeing some of them in the OCG lists. Not this particular package a lot though, but it does seem really interesting. And there's also the package of Utopic Draco Future, which is easily made because you have the same ranks. So if that's something you want to go for, that's also an option. And as for the last couple of cards, I just wanted to mention like a bit more specific ones because they do play Baron and Chenging. You can easily make them because you have level 7 monsters and you can also play hand traps. Now in the OCG, hand traps are seeing a bit more play, specifically Ghost Mourner, because its ruling when it's able to activate is different in the OCG than it is in the TCG, so it's seeing much more play. I won't get into the specifics, but that's how you can make Baron and Chenging. And over here, you can still make it with something like Ash, so I wanted to mention it. And then as for the last card, people play Ausa because it's so free when you're in a mirror match or overall in a matchup when someone is playing just Fenrir. Just taking a Fenrir and using it is honestly busted. So I do think Ausa is like almost a must in the extra deck if you can afford the space, which probably you can because it's like I said, you know, with the comparison to the virtual world deck, it's just mostly utility and you can pretty much play whatever you want. And then to round things off for the cards that can be played with the deck, you can play some main deck cards as well. So D-Shifter, I think I mentioned it already, like it's pretty much obvious. You want your cards getting banished when it comes to the spell and trap cards. You don't really care about anything else getting banished, so Shifter, pretty much a must in the deck, especially in this current format. And since I mentioned Shifter, there's also the possibility of running Dimensional Fissure and Macrocosmos. Like, it's an option, but you do, as we're going to be seeing in the deck lists, like you do want to dedicate as much space as possible to just your engine and your extenders and all of that. And you sort of run out of space if you also decide to play hand traps, so it's an option, although it's not seeing play like in every single list. But something that has been starting to see play in the OCG, I wanted to mention it because it's so cool and so interesting. Like overall in the OCG, like deck building is very much reactive to everything that's going on in that particular time. Like obviously it's like that over here as well, but over there it just seems like people very quickly switch from like, oh, okay, so this is seeing play in the opposing deck. I need to play this to either protect myself or to out their card. And you're immediately going to know what I'm talking about. So against this deck, a card that's really busted is Book of Eclipse. Like the Shangri-Ira can only like lock your zones if it's face up. The Arise card is not going to be able to like banish your cards and all of that if you just Book of Eclipse it. Like you go on your turn, you use Book of Eclipse, and you just don't need to deal with those cards. So people started to play Forbidden Lands to basically go around cards like Book of Eclipse, also cards like Dark Ruler and stuff like that. Like it's really nice. It's a very smart choice. And then also looking at Sauravis. So Sauravis started to see play because it's just you dodging effects that are targeting, like Impermanence, for example. Like cards like Valor might not be that great. Also Nibiru, like it's very nice against the deck, but with monster effects, you are triggering your opponent's effects anyway. So people started to play Impermanence to counter the deck, and Sauravis is a counter to Impermanence by itself. So I wanted to mention those cards as well. And that's pretty much it. I do think I covered almost every single tech imaginable. There's a bunch of other things, I'm sure. But for the most part, those were the ones that are actually seeing a ton of play, especially right now, pre-Photon Hypernova with some of the main deck level 7 extenders. So with that, we're going to jump to a couple of deck lists. I mainly mentioned almost everything already, but we're going to just go over them, go over a combo, and then we're done. So I do have the deck list over there. I'm just going to be looking down to make sure I mention everything. So when the deck first came out, things were played at a bit bigger ratio. Like looking at the first build, like you have the 3 Scareclaw Kashtira, you have 1 Tearlament's Kashtira, and then you have their field spell, you have the Papillas, which is like one of the best spell cards, like we mentioned, 2 Birth. But then the extra deck, like you have 2 of the Xyz monsters, you have some of the rank 7s we have mentioned already, and then the Lynx. And then just looking at builds, like as they slowly developed, people started to cut down on the engine. They are starting to play 3 birth. So they went from 2 birth to 3 because the card, like I said, is really, really nice. You're also playing prosperity in it. They are playing only 2 because it's semi-limited to just have consistency. And what else? Oh, the 2 shifter, because again, it's semi-limited, but they wanted to make space for Sauravis that I mentioned, and also Ghost Reaper in the main deck. Like, you do need to think about those hand traps, like it's specific for their meta. So they cut down on the Scareclaw Kashtira. And then for the extra deck, they decided to play a couple of the other cards. But for the most part, like everything else remained the same. And then just looking over the tier limit Kashtira, I also wanted to mention it. Like there's the 2 Fenrir, also 2 tier elements Kashtira. Like I said, everything is searchable between itself. Like you have the way to the field spell, set rotation, to have a way to Parleraino, and also Havnis, of course, is semi-limited, but you still play all of the other names at 3. And comparing it to the first, like, initial builds, they were still playing Ishizu cards. So that's very interesting. After some time, they just cut Ishizu cards all together. So that's like the initial build, and then the build we already covered is the one that's seeing play right now as we speak. So that's it for the builds. They are not that different. Like, looking at them, most of them are very similar. But still, like I said, it is interesting, like seeing some of the reactive deck building, like I mentioned, with Sauravis and all of that. And then to round things off, I also wanted to, with you guys, go over the combo. I'm just going to play it on the screen. You're going to be able to look at it. But basically, like I mentioned, you would use the unicorn effect when you special summon it to search for a spell card, which is Papias. And then with the Papias, as you're summoning Fenrir, which is able to search the Rice card, it's also able to search other things. But for the purpose of this combo, you're going for Rice card, you're going for the Shangri-Ira, special summoning the Rice card, banishing the Trap card, which, you know, like I said, in the next chain, everything is popping off and it's just so insane. You're banishing cards from your opponent. You're actually chain blocking, going Shangri-Ira and then the trap card, or vice versa, whatever you want, to get a resource back, to banish more cards. And then you're just special summoning the Fenrir for free and making a Rice card. Like I said, you know, combos are nice. With Mind Hacker, you're able to, like I said, expand them, and we touched upon that already, so I won't repeat myself, but that's pretty much what the deck is doing. It's like just putting up different types of disruptions on the board, locking your zones, so it's really hard for you to play, because if they're really smart, like if they know, like especially when they're up against the deck, that they specifically know which zones they need to lock, like you're going to have a hard time playing. That's all I'm saying. So I do think that's going to be it. Hopefully you like this introduction, and I will be making a video about cards to counter Kashtira, so be on the lookout for that as well. And yeah, as always, if you like the video, please like it. If you feel like there's anything that I may have missed, anything that you may want to add, it's always very much welcome, and comments are very appreciated, and I love reading them and responding to you guys. So make sure to do that. Make sure to comment and like, and of course, check out all the social media. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.